Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another session of AMA, which is Ask Me Anything. I have two very special guests that I will introduce shortly. We are broadcasting to you live from the traditional territories of the Chippewas of Rama, a little community just outside of Orillia. If you've never been to Orillia, come visit. This is where our general headquarters is built, and this is where we're broadcasting from. If you happen to drive by, you'll notice that the Pride flag is up on our mast. June is Pride Month, and Pride is a time to celebrate and recognize the 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals and communities. The OPP strives to support equity, diversity, and inclusion within our service and the communities we serve. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. I want to introduce to you an old friend we met quite a few years ago. We have Inspector Wendy Burrows. Welcome, Inspector. And a recent friend and colleague of mine, Corey DeAdder. Hello, Corey.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Now, just as we start, I want to see, where are you coming to us from, Corey?
So I am at OPP General Headquarters in Orillia.
Okay, we're actually in the same building, which it's a pretty big building when you think of it. Inspector Burrows, you are?
Yeah, I am in Perth County, so I am in Sebringville, Ontario, just outside of Stratford, for those of you that might not have heard of Sebringville.
Beautiful area. Stratford Festival, that probably resonates with a lot of people. I'm going to start with you, Inspector. Can you tell us what your official title is and what you do in the Stratford area?
Yeah, so I'm Inspector Wendy Burrow, and my position is the Detachment Commander for Perth County OPP. So my role is I oversee a detachment of about 75 officers and civilian staff and provide policing services to the municipalities of North Perth, West Perth, and Perth East.
Wow, beautiful part of the province. I've been through there a few times in my travels, and it's God's country up there where you are, for sure. Corey, tell us what your role is. And now I can see you're an auxiliary officer. You have many hats, so tell us what your role is with us.
I definitely do have many hats. I am actually the general manager of the food service for the OPP. So anything here at the headquarters that has to do with food, catering, feeding the recruits, the different senior courses, that's all my toy to play with.
Well, I can say I've partaken in the services that your team provides quite often. Every recruit that comes to the academy, officers that are in training, that come to general headquarters, we have a cafeteria, and Corey runs that whole section. I can tell you the food is great. They are missing their little coffee cards, which I'm still hoping we're going to get soon, because after 15 coffees or so, you get a free one. As a typical officer, I'm like, where's my card? I want to collect my stamps. It's Pride Month. Every year, June is Pride. We have the flag flying outside of headquarters. I'm going to start with you, Inspector. Can you tell me why Pride is important to you and why it's important for the organization to recognize events and days like this?
I think it's really important that we recognize the diversity and within all our communities. And so June being Pride Month, it's one of the opportunities for us to be able to celebrate all of the things that make our communities stronger. And part of that is diversity and inclusion. And for me, it's really about, I'm part of the queer community as well. I identify as either gay or queer, whichever people want to use. And to me, representation really matters. And so when you're able to see yourself in roles within, a policing organization or professional organizations or wherever it is you want to go, I think that's really important. And so being able to be a representative, not only for the OPP, but for my community as well is very important to me.
Absolutely. And with an organization so well known and so big as the OPP, I think it's really needed, and I'm proud that we do recognize those special moments and those special things. Thanks you for sharing with us. And I like how you say, gay or queer. It's hard sometimes to know what terms to use. And I like that, when somebody is open to explain, when people want to learn and understand. And I'm going to throw the ball back at you now, Corey. Same thing. Why is Pride important to you? And why do you think it's important for the organization to recognize that?
So Pride is very, very near and dear to my heart. I've been through actually a lot just recently within the last 3-4 years. Um, I came out as gay when I was 29, so 4 years ago. And I actually came out to the first person that I came out to was my wife at the time of 10 years. So we had 2 kids. I just never felt safe coming out, didn't want to come out. And I kind of hoped it would go away. Once I did finally feel comfortable coming out, I only came out to my wife at the time, and I started working very shortly after that, running the food service here at the headquarters for OPP. And the family aspect, the diversity, how inclusive OPP is, really helped me realize that I can easily be who I am, and I don't have to feel bad about it.
Wow. No, that's very powerful, and I'm glad that you're sharing that. And I'm glad to hear that you felt the inclusivity and that family aspect at General Headquarters and within the OPP family. Now, I don't know, is that late in life to come out at 29? Is that?
From my experience, there are quite a few people that come out later in life because they're not open to it when they're younger. They're not around other queer people. Many different reasons. But times are changing, and the world is changing, and
Absolutely.
people are feeling more comfortable at an earlier age now, which I think is great.
Excellent way to put that together. Now, Inspector, I'm going to ask you, and thinking about the same guidelines, I don't know what your journey looked like, but what led you to choose a career in policing, especially with the OPP, and where were you at in your journey?
Yeah, so I started the OPP, I'm going to say very young. So I graduated university, applied to the OPP. My father was involved in law enforcement or in the law profession. He was a lawyer, crown attorney for the province. So dealing with police officers and that had always been something. They would come around the dining room table. We would share. I would listen to stories, and I would always think, that sounds like a really interesting thing. And what really drew me to the OPP, the opportunity to be able to do so many different things, and no matter what you're interested in, there was always something within the OPP that you could do. And and coming into the OPP. Was I concerned about what it was like already to be out? Because I was already with my partner, and it was definitely a consideration, and something that when I went through the recruitment process, I was like, oh, do I mention that I'm gay? Do I not? And if I do, is that going to impact my career? And as we know, one of the key foundations or the OPP values is integrity, and so that was one of the things I was honest about with my recruiter, and said, "Yep, I'm gay. I'm part of the community. I have my partner, and it's going to affect both of us coming into this profession." But it's been a great career, and 26 years in, so it's and I'd say overall, it's always been positive.
I think two things I got from that I want to mention. Isn't it amazing that there used to be a time where you almost had to worry about that? Do I tell people? I'm so glad that we've evolved. Like Corey said, times are changing, and it shouldn't be something that someone has to worry about. That's their own journey, but it shouldn't be something that affects whether or not you wonder if you're going to be able to get a job. And I like that you mentioned how it's going to affect you and your partner. One of the big things, and we spoke with Dr. Vivian Lee at the last AMA, was that joining policing is not just for the individual, but it's for the family. Really, the whole family joins policing because life as you know it changes, whether it's from shift work, the type of work that you do, the stressors that come with it. So I think it's neat that you already knew coming in that this decision was going to affect not just you, but the life that you had or have with your partner. Now, Corey, for you coming in to join the OPP, what were you doing before you came to be the manager of food services?
So I've been actually an executive chef for 16 years. So I've spent my entire working life in kitchens.
I would hazard a guess that you're an excellent cook then.
Some would agree with that.
Uh, One of the things I want to do when I retire is take cooking lessons, so maybe you can hook me up or point me in
Absolutely.
the right direction. Now, I just want to acknowledge we have a chat going on. There's a lot of people asking questions about the auxiliary program, and we will get to the answer those because we're going to specifically ask Corey some questions about that a little bit later. There's a lot of thank you for sharing, thank you for being so open, coming through. I don't know if you are seeing those, but I want to make sure that I relay that to you. So as we talk about a career in policing, joining the OPP, for you, Corey, as you got the job as the manager of food services. How did you end up in an auxiliary uniform? What was that journey? Did it start once you got here? Was it from before?
So I actually, from a very young age, I wanted to be an officer. Um, but being completely honest, I didn't think I could do it. I felt like it was too much. It was too overwhelming. And I thought, I've always been interested in food. So I went to culinary school. Um, I was working in kitchens before that. And I started working in kitchens. I got the position as an executive chef at a pretty young age. And I went with it. I've had a very nice, fulfilling career. And since starting to work here at OPP headquarters, like I said before, it's the family aspect that first drew me in. I've made a lot of really good friends here at the headquarters, officers, sergeants, staff sergeants, inspectors, as well as a bunch of civilians. And it really opened my eyes as to what policing really is. There's a lot of different views on policing, but the family aspect of it, the inclusivity is huge within the OPP organization.
Is that what drew you to the auxiliary program?
It is. So a really good friend of mine said that I should try out for the auxiliary program. I should look into it. So I did, and I have since. So I just got my badge with auxiliary back in November, so it hasn't been very long. And since then, I have come back and helped mentor new auxiliary classes. I'm currently coaching 2 new auxiliary recruits at my detachment, and it's going really well. It's going really
That's
well.
awesome. There's a couple questions that have come up. I'm just going to answer and let people know any information that you're looking about the recruitment process for the auxiliary or the cadet program, because I see questions on that. Please go to opp.ca. opp.ca is our a wealth of information. There's different links you can access. You can read about the OPP. So for answers on questions like that, specifically, there's a question about the training of the auxiliary. There's usually a week of training. It could be 8 days. I'm not sure what the exact details are, and they usually navigate that with each class. But again, I want to remind everybody, opp.ca is the place to go to get all their information. Now, Inspector Burrows, throwing the ball back to you. I know that you spent some time in recruitment in the past, but could you tell us a brief synopsis, where you started, every step along the way that took you to where you are today?
I don't know if it's going to be brief if you want every step along the way. But
Well, if you want to make it in a couple hops, I'll jump in there.
first off, Corey, congratulations on joining the auxiliary program. It's a fantastic program, and as I'm sure Sergeant Hick will talk about too, great feeder system into the organization, as well as being able to get some great skills. So I started my career back in 1998. I was assigned to the Middlesex Detachment out of Lucan, general law enforcement, which is what we all start off doing. So I was at a general duties detachment, and over the course of the years that I was in Middlesex, I took on roles as a scene of crime officer. Uh, I was a technical collision investigator. I went into our crime unit for a while, and something that's near and dear to my heart, and sort of brought me into the recruitment aspect as well as I was the auxiliary liaison officer for Middlesex Detachment as well. So after that, I went into recruitment, as you mentioned, and spent 3 years working in recruitment, doing interviews, mentoring, supporting people as they move into this career within the OPP. Then I was promoted to sergeant, so I went into our provincial communication center, so working with the dispatchers, call takers, where all the calls come in. Great opportunity to really learn about communication skills, and sort of some of the unsung heroes within our organization is our dispatchers and call takers. They're the front line where all the calls come in, and they do a fantastic job. So
Mhm.
always like to give them a bit of a shout out as well as we're doing
Absolutely.
this. Then I went into corporate communications for a while. So I was in there doing social media within the OPP, and really I started that when I was in recruitment, and then continued on with corporate comms. And then after that, I went into our regional headquarters in West Region, which is where I spent the majority of my career, and was the HR analyst and then the executive officer to our command team within West before being promoted again to staff sergeant out of our regional headquarters as the regional planning officer. So I did a lot with action plans, continuity of operations planning, incident command. That type of thing was my role within West Region. Had a couple opportunities to do acting stints for inspectors. So I was the acting inspector for staff development, business and finance, as well as I had an opportunity to go to Huron Detachment and be the acting inspector, detachment commander there. And then I was promoted into Perth County as the detachment commander. I've been here for almost 2 years now, off and on. I went back to regional headquarters and filled in for them for support services. And then I recently did an acting superintendent position at West Region headquarters as well, taking care of 4 detachments in the crime program.
That's quite a journey, and you sure have touched a lot of different areas in that journey. Um, I could see why you're in the role that you are, having having that background. I did most of my career in services, kind of completely different. I'm glad that there's people with the knowledge that you have, because I would be lost in just about everything you mentioned that you were involved with on your path. I want to make a point. You mentioned unsung heroes, our dispatchers. I also got to do an acting staff job at the Aurelia Com Center, and I completely echo your thoughts. They are unsung heroes. They're part of the frontline service that we provide. They're the first ones that receive the call. And some other unsung heroes are the two people running these podcasts, these AMAs. We have Sarah Bryant and Elizabeth Coretti. They're in the background. They never get any of the credit and the limelight. But the reason that all this works and that it works well is because of them. They're the technical team, and I want to make a point to thank them, give them a shout out. I would be nowhere without them. You know, they know how to make everything look good. So, Liz and Sarah, thank you so much for everything that you do. And I'm sure our viewers would echo those thoughts. Now, when we talk about the journey that you were both on, Corey, yours might have been more in the private sector at first. But I'm going to ask you, Corey, along the journey before OPP and as you came into the OPP, did you face any barriers? Is there anything that stands out to you that was a real barrier for you?
I did. When I came out, I did face quite a bit of hate, which is sad to say. Unfortunately, I think coming out, especially later on in life, there's always that possibility that you're going to face that. For the most part, it was positive. Very, very little negative. But I would definitely say that my biggest hurdle that I had to overcome was myself.
It's, yeah, and I'm sorry about, when I hear stories like that, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Would you say that it made you stronger, that maybe you'll be able to help others now, having been through and conquered those barriers?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I can definitely say that there's a lot of people that you don't think would be open, but they really are. I thought that I would lose a lot of family coming out. Um, I didn't. My now ex-wife, her and I get along great. We co-parent great. My kids are both very happy. Um, they're very happy that they have a gay dad. I mean, I don't think it really matters to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of the people that I thought would not be behind me are my biggest supporters.
Thanks for sharing that. I realize it's a personal topic, but I think it's a great story and it gives people hope and it helps people realize that, you know what, you're not alone out there and there's a lot of good people out there. There's tons of comments coming in thanking you both for sharing. Some people saying they just got their offer letter, that these AMAs have helped solidify that they wanted to join the OPP. People being encouraged by what you're sharing. So it's very powerful how we can use this type of forum to reach so many people. Now, Inspector Bros, I want to ask you the same thing. Along the journey and with all the different stops you had, especially moving up in the ranks, was there any barriers that you faced?
Uh, and I completely echo with Corey, right? A lot of the barriers are ones that we perceive ourselves, but they don't necessarily exist. And so I really think that people can achieve anything as long as they're willing to put themselves out there and go and try to sort of push back or push past some of your own self-confidence maybe, or your own ideas of what you might be anticipating. And I'll say, like, getting into the job and coming on while I was already out probably helped me a lot, because it didn't allow me to hide the same way. But one of the things about being part of the queer community is it's a constant process of coming out. And you'll go to community events, and there are times where you're like, okay, when I talk about my partner, there's the automatic assumption sometimes is that I'm talking about a husband, whereas when I talk about my partner, I'm talking about my spouse. We've been married for quite some time now, but there's that assumption that it's that you're in a heterosexual relationship, and that's not the case for me. So it's that constant having to continue to come out that is sometimes challenging, especially when you're dealing with other community partners that might not be as open as we are. And we saw last year during some of the protest movements in regards to protests that were anti-hate against members of the 2S LGBTQ community. I found that a really challenging time for myself, trying to represent the OPP, being neutral while still supporting and seeing members of my own community that protests were being about. So that was one of the things that I found challenging being in this role and being part of the community, was trying to balance both sides of things as well.
I think it's a constant journey when you think of the education piece, because I think a lot of it is that education. I know myself, I didn't always know the proper terms, or if you use a term out of context, not realizing you're not saying it properly. And there, I'm going to echo Corey's thoughts that people that I work with at General Headquarters were really gracious in the way they either corrected me or said, "Hey, did you realize, that you should probably say it like this?" Or when you say that, it can be perceived things that I would have never thought of. So there is a learning curve, and I like to think that the general public, like Corey mentioned, society is changing, and I think there's a desire to want to learn and to understand. I think that the general community is becoming more and more inclusive and understands that, listen, the world comes in different shapes and forms, and we all belong here. No one's better than another, like the statement that the commissioner had said for Pride Month. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. That pretty well sums it all. And I think we're on the journey there. I'm not saying we're quite there yet, but we're on our way. I want to give a little shout out to Cam, who wrote that he's at the background stage. We wish you luck, Cam. I see that other people have wished you luck. Tons of comments thanking you for sharing. I want to make sure I relay that. I can't read them all to you, but people are writing in grateful that we are having this discussion. Okay, continuing with our theme here, we talked about your position as a leader and barriers you met along the way. Is there anything in your leadership journey, doesn't matter which level, that really stands out to you that you want to share with us? Doesn't have to be related to Pride Month, but just a moment that you could share with our viewers about, what, in my leadership journey, there was this one time. People love to hear these stories, and it encourages them. So I'm going to start with you, Inspector Bro. Is there a moment in your leadership? Now, do you want, if you want to think about it, I've got something else to ask
No,
Corey.
no, I'm good.
Kind of throwing you
No.
on the spot here.
I think the biggest thing for me, and it doesn't, I'm going to say rank to me isn't as important as the way we treat people, right? So the fact that I'm an inspector, it was never something I set out to really do. It was just something that as I continued throughout my career, it was something that, you had mentors and supporters and people saying, yeah, you know what, you should think about moving to the next step. Um, but for me, I'd say the biggest thing for my leadership is just the ability to talk to others and mentoring and supporting. And I think that's been one of the biggest factors for me is seeing people have success. So there's a lot of examples I can talk about things that I've been involved in as an OPP officer, whether it's, going to the unfortunately a fatal collision and being able to support the investigation and family through that, whether it's I was part of the command team for the integrated response for when we had the Pan Am Games, which was fantastic to be a part of that and doing corporate communications during that time. And then was working directly with the incident commander for the Windsor Bridge Ambassador Bridge protests, and that was a key moment in my leadership journey of being able to watch this great organization work so closely with the other Windsor Police and the border, with being able to safely come to an end with some of those protests. So lots of different opportunities, but the
Yeah.
main thing for me is in leadership is our people and how we treat people, whether it's members of the public, whether it's members that we work with, and being able to support them wherever they are has been the biggest thing for me.
I completely agree, and I love that you bring that up. I never thought I'd ever be a sergeant. Listen, I think I was so lost that they gave me a dog to help me find my way. And really, when you think of it, a canine handler is really just the EO for the dog, right? We drive them to where they're needed. We feed them their meals. We pick them up. It's really, if I always said, if the dog could learn how to drive, I'd have been out of a job. But leadership is really about looking after your team, looking after other people, and I like that you mentioned mentoring them, helping them move up, which is what leadership is all about. And we get to see that, out in the field. Uniform recruitment was deployed to Windsor for the bridge. We were in Sarnia. I think it was the blue something bridge, and we
Yeah,
were the
Blue Water
last
Bridge.
defense.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, we took that post with pride. The uniform recruitment was there in full force. Now, Corey, and thank you for sharing that, Inspector. I know that there's probably a lot of moments that you could bring us to, but those are some pretty key ones that probably everyone can relate to because it was an event that was on the world stage, really. Now, Corey, you're on a different kind of journey, and we've talked about this in the past. I want you to tell me about the journey you're on now because I understand that you're on the journey of wanting to become a provincial constable with the Ontario Provincial Police.
I am. So, like I said, that I've always wanted to be an officer. Those quote unquote dreams kind of came to an end when I became a chef. And I had a flourishing career. I have a great job where I am now, a great career running the food service here at headquarters. But in my time here, seeing what OPP values, seeing what OPP is, has really lit a fire under me and made me want to take hold of what I really passionately want to do. So becoming an auxiliary constable, which is volunteer. I have, since November, I have volunteered a little over 450 hours on top of my full-time job. And it's not to, have hours on paper. It's not to make any of that look good, although it does look great on an application. It's because I love doing it. I love getting out in the community. I love, going out on patrol with uniformed officers. It's fulfilling, and it really, in the movies when that light bulb strikes,
Yeah.
that's what happened. And I am now on a journey to put in my application to become a provincial police officer, and my fitness journey is where I'm focusing really hard on right now. I have lost in the past 5 months or so, I've lost a little over 30 pounds. I still
Wow.
have a little ways to go, but it's definitely something that can happen.
That is awesome. And thanks so much for sharing. I realize it's a personal journey, but that says that just speaks to volumes about the effort and the work you're putting into this. Not just the weight loss, but the hours that you're giving back to your community, showing that you want to give back. Joining the auxiliaries, a lot of questions that come up about that. Is it a good thing if you're thinking of becoming an officer? Absolutely. In a lot of ways, I describe the auxiliary program and the cadet program as our farm teams. People that are in the process that want to become an officer one day, not quite ready, whether it's fitness, whether it's studies, whether it's something else that you need to sort out. Don't be afraid to apply to the auxiliary or the cadet program. It's a great way to get involved in the OPP, become immersed in the OPP culture, and start to do ride-alongs, get to brush shoulders with officers, get information. We also do an information session once a month here at General Headquarters. There's some across the province, but make sure you go to opp.ca to check up on when there's a session about recruitment near you. And I bring that up because, Corey, you've helped me at several of the ones I do. I do a monthly session at General Headquarters. If you want to speak to an auxiliary officer, great way. Sign up to the session. There's always 2 or 3 auxiliary officers that help us with the signing in and everything, and you can come and speak directly with Corey. Ask him what the process was like. Ask him what the training was like. These are great programs. I would encourage anybody to look at them, see what the qualifications are. There's a lot of questions that come up. What's the requirements? Please go to opp.ca. You'll find all the minimum requirements that are needed for any of our positions over there. It's a great website. You can just read through it and follow through. Now, part of your fitness journey, I know you've been training with the OPP photographer, Jane Vanderveen, and I want to throw her a shout out because Jane's also on that journey. And last month, Jane got her fitness pin for the very first time. She got the Ontario Police Fitness Award. So congratulations to Jane. We want to give you a shout out. Thank you for having that fire. I think it's great that Jane, that you're working with Corey. You guys are helping each other out, training together. And I know there's a lot of forums like that out there. There's Facebook groups that share tips and encourage one another. There's a lot of comments coming up on that, people congratulating each other. So I think it's really interesting. Amazing journey. And I know, Inspector Bros, you mentioned that you used to be the liaison officer. And I also was the liaison officer for the auxiliary unit in South Porcupine, way back when in the late 90s. So it's a great program that's always been dear to my heart also. Now, as we move along here, one of the things I want to ask you about, if you could go back in time, Inspector Bros, we're going to wrap up here. I'm just going to make sure there's no more questions on the chat. But as a final thought, Inspector, if you could go back in time, give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be? Thinking about the journey of wanting to become an OPP officer. Inspector Burrows? Oh, maybe we have a delay.
Possibly.
Yeah, and just
Okay, I'm going to go to you, Corey. I think we might have a delay with Inspector Burrows. Inspector, can you hear me now? Okay, we're going to have a delay. So, Corey, I'm going to go to you. Being that you're in the process, what is the best advice that you've received?
yeah, I've got you now.
And what advice would you pass on to somebody else?
So I can definitely say, going from my journey, the biggest piece of advice that I can give is strive for progress, not perfection. Any little bit of progress in whether it's your fitness journey, your community involvement, your day-to-day happiness, your mental health. It's very important that you don't push for perfection. Strive for progress.
That is great advice, Corey. That, you know what? I'm gonna borrow that phrase from you. I think that should be on a poster. But please go on.
So, and I mean, be yourself. Don't try and be somebody that you think people want you to be. That's the worst thing that you can do for yourself. But be yourself, be true to yourself, be full with your integrity, your passion, be honest, and go for what you want and go full force.
Absolutely. Great advice, Corey. Thank you for sharing that. And along with that, I would say come to an information session. We will light a fire under you, get you inspired. Inspector Bros, I think I have you back. Can you hear me now? I think we still have a delay with that connection. So, as we wrap up, I want to remind everyone that the OPP is not just inclusive, we strive for equity. The OPP is a family. And I always say in my sessions, whether you want to volunteer, whether you want to join as a uniform member, whether you want to join us as a civilian, or that your journey is going to take you through all those steps, we welcome you. We want you to apply. Go to opp.ca, look at our upcoming events. They're advertised on a regular basis. They're throughout the province. We have an OPP Bound coming in a few weeks for women. There's other events happening around the province. Make sure you visit opp.ca. Follow us on social media. Our social media platforms always come up with great posts, information, what's coming, what's happening, what's trendy. So I want to thank our two guests, Corey and Inspector Burrows. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, to share about your personal story. I can tell just from the comments how so many viewers that joined us were touched. And although it can be a sensitive and personal topic, thank you so much for opening up. It's great that we have members with us that are open to talk to us. We will be back within, I think, a couple of weeks with the next AMA. Make sure you stay live with us and follow us. And until the next time we see you, I want to remind you, it's summer coming. Be careful out there. There's a lot of traffic out on the highways. Check your trailer. Make sure the lights work. Make sure the tires are well. Look for Kerry Schmidt on the air. You'll see him giving you all kinds of reminders. Thank you all for joining us. From General Headquarters, we're going to sign off.